Okay, today we're going to talk about the end times as found in the Bible and why I think we're in the end times. It comes from biblical evidence. And today there are, I believe it was Peter, you would have to look that up, mockers, talked about mockers coming in the last days, saying, where's this day of his coming? He's promised this for 2,000 years now. It hasn't come yet, or almost 2,000 years. Where's this day of his coming? Well, it's in Scripture, and we're in those end times, and I'm just going to show you and lay out why it says. I'm going to show you the Scriptures that says we're in the end times. A lot of reason people don't see these Scriptures, including Christians, is they have preconceived notions. They've already made up their mind based upon what Jesus said, no man knows the day or the hour, and they have misapplied that, they have misunderstood that, they have taken that out of context of Scripture. There's a lot of Scripture that talks about the end times. And we're also going to get into here a little bit too about why I believe Barack Obama is the Antichrist, or the secular Antichrist, or the beast from the sea, as it talks about in Revelation. The beast from the earth, I believe it's Pope Francis. Both of them, you can make the argument, both of them are 666. They're kind of like the Antichrist duo. But here's a compelling passage to get us started and to get your understanding started, because you really need to be paying attention to this, because there's things we need to do as Christians in the end times to prepare. I've been talking about this and preaching about this, well, not preaching in a church, but talking to pastors and ministers of churches and congregations for 14 years now, and nobody really pays it any heed. They're not concerned. They don't believe there's anything we need to do. They just basically think one day the world will end. It'll be Judgment Day, and that's all there's going to be to it. And they disregard a lot of counsel of Scripture that talks about, for example, in Thessalonians, Second Thessalonians 2, that there's going to be a powerful deception to deceive even the elect. Jesus says, if possible. I believe it was Jesus. So that's something to be concerned about. If it's going to be that big of a delusion, what could that delusion be? And those delusions are already out there. They started since 9/11, since the so-called terrorist attack on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. That was a powerful delusion. It was a fraud. It was a false flag attack. If you don't see that, you're in the delusion. You're still in the delusion, because there's been other frauds that have been perpetrated upon the world by the same Antichrist system that's rising to power. If you don't see this Antichrist system rising to power, you're not paying attention, because they're talking about it in broad daylight. And it's hidden in plain view. By the time you wake up to it, it's going to be too late. You can't be waiting much longer. Okay, we're going to look at Daniel chapter 12, verse 11. From the time that the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination that causes desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. Blessed is the one who waits for and reaches the end of the 1,335 days. So what's he talking about? The time that the daily sacrifice is abolished. Well, that was 607, or summer of 607 BC. We know that from Daniel chapter 1, because it was in the third year. Yeah, in the third year, Daniel 1, verse 1, in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the articles from the temple of God. These he carried off to the temple of his God in Babylonia and put in the treasure house of his God. So taking these temple items out from the temple of God into a pagan temple marked the end of sacrifice and offering. The priests couldn't do sacrifice and offering in the temple because it had been sacrilege. It was an abomination that these pagans went in there and took out these articles out of the temple. And it tells us right when that was. In the 3rd year of that reign, we know when that was, around 607. So from there to the abomination, desolation being erected, you could translate that, there will be 1,290 days. 1,290 days, another way to interpret that, just look it up in the Hebrew, is year. 1,290 years, it could be translated. So that would point to 684, roughly. Or 683 AD. And that was when the Dome of the Rock, the Muslim Dome of the Rock, built on the Temple Mount, same where the Jews built their temple, both were destroyed. So now on the Temple Mount's an abomination. That's why it's called an abomination. It's idolatry. Islam is idolatry. And it's built on the Temple Mount. And that was 683, roughly, right in there. I mean, it gives, like, if you look it up, it gives about a 10-year period for when it was being constructed. And then from that point, goes out to that abomination, desolation, points to another abomination, desolation. 1,335 years later was to 2018, also in the summer, May 2000. What happened May 2018? Well, number one, it was the 70th anniversary of Israel, which fulfills Daniel chapter 9. Starting at verse 24, 77s are decreed for your people in your holy city to finish transgressions. 77s, or 70 weeks. Another translation of week in there, it means week of the festival of weeks. It was a yearly festival with the Jews. Happened every year. So 70 weeks is 70 years. This is pointing to the end times. Just look at Daniel, this whole book in Daniel, if you look at it, keeps talking about the end, at the time of the end. At the time of the end, the prophecies will be unsealed. They won't make sense until the time of the end. Why is that? We didn't have modern Israel return to 1948 AD. So how could these 70 weeks start being fulfilled until Israel's back? So these prophecies aren't going to be making sense until the end times, until we get into the end times. So that's Daniel chapter 9, the 70 weeks. And then along with Daniel chapter 12, it talks about, 12. They're rolled up and sealed, verse 9. They're rolled up and sealed until the time of the end. So then from the 683, you go out, it says 1,300 in Daniel 12, 1,335 years. I don't know how much more simpler it could be, 1,335 years to get to May 2018. That's when Trump moved the embassy, U.S. embassy, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Why is that considered another abomination event? because you have to understand from Daniel 9, and we're not getting into Daniel 9 this talk, we're just talking about Daniel 12 mainly, is that Obama is coming back. He's prophesied to be the king that was, is not, yet will be. He's the anointed one along with Jesus. They're dueling off. The false Christ or the Antichrist will go up against the Lord and all of his people in the final battle of Armageddon. Obama's going to be the leader of the Antichrist forces, and Jesus will be the leader of the Christian forces. Anyway, so the U.S. Embassy is an abomination because Obama's going to be back in power. He's the 8th king. Revelation will talk about him being the 8th king. The king that was, is not, and yet will be. When he's the 8th king again, he's going to use American forces to go into Israel, attack Israel, as Gog, Magog prophecy in Ezekiel 38 and 39 talk about. See, it's all the scriptures holding together here. So you have those two time periods together, 1290 years and 1335, make 2,625 years. So we have this 2,625 year prophecy. And now from there, we'll have to get into Daniel 9, because there's more to that prophecy. From at the end of the prophecy wasn't the 70 years. There's 70 more years, 7 more years tacked on to the end of that. It's a 77-year prophecy. And there's reasons to believe that from Old Testament times too. When Jesus was prophesied to come in Daniel 9 too, it was a 77-week prophecy, 539 years. That's the same prophecy, just interpreted slightly differently. First coming is interpreted one way, the same prophecy, second coming is interpreted a little differently. And we'll get into that when we look at Daniel 9. But for now, just looking at Daniel 12, you should say we're definitely in the end time period, because right around then it's talking about the middle of 7 years or 3.5 years, and that's more clues of what we're going to get into. But we are definitely in that time, and you know it from Daniel 12. You can tell your friends we're in the end times. Daniel 12 says so. And do they have a better idea? No, they don't. They're just hoping. That's the funny thing about Christians these days. So-called Christians hope it don't happen. Why not? You get to be with the Lord. The Lord's coming back in judgment to judge the wicked, have justice on earth where there is no justice. It's lawlessness. It's a criminal country we live in. It's run by criminals. Why wouldn't you want justice to come? And for there to be true justice. There's no justice in the United States, a very rare justice. It's justice, just us. J-U-S-T space U-S, just for us. You can, if you know the right people and you can pay off the right people and you're part of the club, you have justice. If you're not, you don't. So why wouldn't we want true justice to come in and reign? Why would we be scared of the end of days? Doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, we're going to end with that. Thank you very much for listening. Again, my name, say it as an introduction, my name is James Hargrave. I'm a pastor of Greatest Love Fellowship here in Louisiana. Please like my video, like my page, visit my website, consider donating. I don't take a salary, it all goes into the ministry and to feeding the poor in Louisiana when we have donations. So, follow your heart, follow the Spirit, and do what the Spirit's asking you to do.